I'm Phil Schumann in for John today with you till 4 o'clock. Thanks very much for the opportunity. We've been talking a little bit of crime, this 7-Eleven takeover over the weekend in San Pedro. Just outrageous to me, and just as like a poster child incident for the state of things in Southern California. We have a huge election coming up for a district attorney in this county. It's something we've talked about here quite a bit on KFI. Will George Gascon survive? Will Nathan Hochman become the new DA? Tougher on crime than Gascon, he says. We talked about a police shortage in Los Angeles. Maybe would that impact a 7-Eleven takeover, street takeovers? I don't necessarily think so. It's the same situation in Long Beach, shortage of police. Same thing with the sheriff's department in Los Angeles County, shortage. One of the big issues is the amount of time it takes to hire and train somebody. It takes months. Can we do that faster? Do we want to cut corners on that? I don't think so. But one of the big stories in Southern California that not many people are paying close attention to, unless you happen to be one of the folks who still read the LA Times, and unfortunately that number's, I think, going down. Not me, though. I'm still loyal, still very loyal, is the criminal trial of a high-powered attorney named Tom Girardi. The newspaper usually refers to him as the now disgraced former attorney Tom Girardi. He's 85 years old. He was a big-time attorney in Los Angeles for decades, had his own firm, and he's being prosecuted by the feds for 4 counts of wire fraud, and he essentially accused of stealing his client's money, $15 million over several years, and one of the sort of sexy details is that they accused him of spending it on private jets, jewelry, clothes, for his now estranged wife, Erica Jane, his much younger estranged wife, who you may know from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Erica Jane. So joining us now is former federal prosecutor Neama Rahmani. My understanding is that this trial, this case is going to the jury if it hasn't already. What do you think is going to happen here?
Well, Phil, closing arguments today, and really a surprise last week when Tom Girardi took the witness stand. Criminal defendants rarely do.
Right.
Obviously, he's not an ordinary criminal defendant. He's a lawyer, but I think things are looking bad for, the person who was really Aaron Brockovich was made about. And obviously, the younger people know him from, the Real Housewives, but this is one of the most prominent attorneys in California.
Right.
And to see the fall from grace, and I think ultimately he's going to go down because he not only stole the money, he was, there are recordings of him, there's emails, there's text messages where he's lying to clients about the whereabouts of those funds, saying, a judge is holding it up, or there's some medical lien or some other issue. So I think he's going to be convicted, but obviously you never know what 12 strangers who are going to be deliberating in that jury deliberation room are going to do.
Now, if you're an attorney and you have an escrow account for funds that may be awarded to you as a result of a lawsuit, for example, and it's not like it's just deposited into your personal checking account and you can do whatever you want with it. I mean, isn't there supposed to be a clear record of receiving dispersal of funds? So in a case like this, shouldn't it be cut and dry what happened to clients' money?
There absolutely is, and there's a client trust fund, and I have one of those funds. But even though there were more than 200 complaints to the State Bar of California because Girardi had so much influence over them, undue improper influence, they didn't do their job, and they didn't investigate them like they should have. So, there were rules that applied to the rest of the lawyers in California, but apparently not Tom Girardi, because they didn't do their job, and had they done those audits or followed up on those complaints, it probably would have had him under indictment a long time ago.
So do you think that they're trying to send a message, they being the feds, to other attorneys? Do you think this is a one-off case? I mean, you don't hear about these kinds of prosecutions very often, do you?
It's not often. I was a former federal prosecutor. To even indict an attorney or get a search warrant, you got to get approval all the way up the chain to D.C., But look, we're seeing this more and more. Unfortunately, there are unscrupulous lawyers. Obviously, we're all talking about Girardi here in L.A., but one of the biggest lawyer cases in the country was Alec Murdaugh in South Carolina, who obviously was convicted of killing his wife and son, but he stole tens of millions of dollars from clients as well. And When you have victims like this who have lost loved ones or suffered these catastrophic injuries, it's really the cardinal sin to be ripped off and defrauded by their own lawyer in their time of need. So I do think the feds really want to send a message in a case like this.
And in this one, it's also particularly interesting in that he claims that he has dementia. And he was trying to avoid trial in the first place, right? I mean, it reminded me of the Godfather movie. And he came to court in like a shabby sweater with holes in it. This is a guy that's normally, one on everybody's best dressed list. And I guess the courts rejected that claim.
Yeah, you see this defense. We saw a little bit with Harvey Weinstein, not so much the mental decline and the dementia, but, they're arguing poor health, Bob Durst, the frail old man. Because, look, at the end of the day, the only chance that Girardi has of getting off is some sort of sympathy vote by a juror, because I think the paper trail is pretty clear.
Right.
He stole the money. He was the head of the firm. He benefited. You talk about the private jets, the jewelry, the mansion.
Right.
He's trying to blame the CFO. But it's really going to be someone that feels bad for this senile old man who doesn't know what's going on. That's really the only defense in the case, so I understand why his lawyers are going in that direction.
But here's the question. For the victims who were awarded millions of dollars in these heartbreaking cases, do they have any chance of getting that money back? I mean, the money is probably gone and spent, right? So great. So Girardi gets convicted, and maybe he gets a prison term, or maybe he doesn't on compassionate reasons. I mean, he's old and feeble anyway. But what about the victims? How do you make them whole?
Well, the victims are getting pennies on the dollar. So he filed bankruptcy, and the bankruptcy trustee, to his credit, has tried to claw back some of these misused funds. They auctioned everything off from his office and his home. But the other thing is, look, Erica Jane divorced him just in time, got half of the estate. She's not a party to this criminal case. They filed civil lawsuits against her, but most of those have been unsuccessful. So, yeah, the victims are left holding the bag here. So even if there is criminal justice and Girardi, I expect him to die in federal prison, those victims will never be made whole.
So what do you think, assuming he's convicted, which seems likely, what do you think, is there a lesson here? Is there a message? I mean, we talked a little bit about maybe other attorneys are going to pay a little bit more attention. What do you think the takeaway should be? That attorneys need much closer supervision, or the state bar needs to be more aggressive? What's your sense of what we should take away from this?
I know the state bar needs to do their job, and when they get complaints, doesn't matter if it's a celebrity lawyer or someone who's, well-connected, knows all the politicians making the right political contributions. Look, there have been rule changes. I have to disclose every client trust account, every IOTA, which is interest on lawyer trust account. I need to disclose that with the state bar, subject to audit at any time. But you need to make sure that, look, if you're the state bar, you're getting complaints that someone's stealing your money, do your job. Investigate them. Don't just turn a blind eye because it's someone who's rich and famous.
So this must be interesting for you to follow. I mean, I'm just checking a little bit into your background. I mean, you were, I think, a teenager when you graduated from college. You went to I'm not really familiar with the name Harvard. I think Harvard College of Law, and I think people have heard of that. What's your career as an attorney been like? I mean, what would you say? I know you're a federal prosecutor. Now you're in private practice. I mean, what's the highlight of a career like yours?
Yeah, so I've really done it all. I started at the largest firm in LA at the time, Melvin Myers, defending big corporations, doing some criminal defense work. Then I was a prosecutor. Then I was in LA running enforcement at the City Ethics Commission, overseeing the elected officials and elections in LA. But now I do civil plaintiffs work. I do personal injury, employment, civil rights. So I handle a lot of the same cases as Girardi. So the way it works is we handle a case, we win, we get paid. The money goes into our trust account.
Right.
And from there, anyone that is owed money on the case has to get paid. It could be an expert, it could be a doctor, it could be us as the lawyers. But ultimately, the balance has to go to the client, and they need to be paid. So Girardi was getting this money, paying himself, at least allegedly, and not paying the client, and coming up with a whole host of excuses as to why they weren't getting paid. And he would keep doing this. And then ultimately, right, he would rip off newer clients to pay older ones. But ultimately, like any Ponzi scheme or any fraud scheme, it did come crashing down, and that's what happened here.
All right, Neama Rahmani, I appreciate your time. I got one quick question before I let you go. If you're out there listening and you need an attorney, whether it's a small case, a big case, what would you say to the public would be the most important thing to look for in making a choice of an attorney?
I think the most important thing is to not just call someone because of a commercial or a billboard or whatever, right? Do some research, man. It's like you're going to a doctor, right? You're not going to just pick up the phone and call someone that has the most billboards, right? Look at their experience, look at their education, look at their results, actually meet with them, talk to them, look at reviews, go online, do some vetting. It's a very important decision. Don't just go with someone because they happen to be the best marketer. That lawyer might have never even seen a courtroom.
Good advice. Neama Rahmani, thanks for your time. Look forward to talking with you again. There's never any shortage of legal issues in the news, right?
Of course. Thanks for having me, Phil. As always, appreciate it.
Thank you.